going to talk to you about a film called Whiplash. It's a 2014 film. We just did a talk hard about J.K. Simmons, who you see right there in this photo. Holy cow. The film is actually kind of small in nature, but delivers amazing performance. Actually, both actors, Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons wins his only Oscar, and wow, does he bring it in this film. So let me tell you a little bit about the film. It is sort of that Oscar artsy type of film. It's not going to be for everyone. It has a very raw theme with some interesting twists at the end, and is very performance and dialogue driven. It's from 2014 by Sony. Teller plays a young man named Andrew. He is an aspiring jazz drummer going to this elite New York City school. And in the process, through a couple of events, he ends up meeting Fletcher, as this guy, and basically pulls Andrew to be part of this sort of jazz band, right? And they have this competition, and it's all about this perfection that Fletcher demands. This incredible, volatile, shocking drill sergeant screaming, calling them names, profanity, insults are off the chain. Basically, it's like emotional abuse on like next level. And it's one of those things too, especially when you're not into music or a musician on anything like this level. You can't even, I couldn't even figure out what the character's talking about. He'd be like, "Oh, you're too fast, too slow." I'm like, I'm not hearing any difference. I don't get it, right? So I'm sure a lot of that is by design, right? It is sort of in an incredible performance driven thing, right? Because the opening sequence where we have this band and you have this Andrew's sitting here for the first time. He's second drum, basically. He's the backup drummer. And they're doing something, and he says, "Well, we have an out-of-tune player here. Anyone want to identify themselves?" And he's like, "Last chance. You're sabotaging my bands. Don't you know you're out of tune?" That kind of thing. But when he confronts this student, "Do you think you're out of tune?" and starts screaming at him. And then he says, blah, 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 "Carried your fat long enough," throws him out of the class, whatever. And then as he leaves, he points out that is actually, this is the guy he's screaming at. This is not Andrew. And he says, he was not even the one out of tune, but he didn't know he wasn't out of tune. That's bad enough. He points out the other person, and then they do a take 10. It's Andrew's turn. This is literally our first impression of Fletcher, and it's Andrew's first impression of Fletcher. So it's fantastic, right? So this is the premise of the movie. It's about this relationship, about Andrew trying to push himself to be the main drummer, a better drummer, live up to the expectations and standards of this guy, this teacher, make these competitions, those kinds of things. He has this brief relationship. Melissa Benoist, she is the girl that plays in Supergirl, and she's fun. She has a little spiel back and forth. When they break up later in the film, that's a better scene for her, by the way. Really enjoyed that. But it's really just about the band and this relationship, which, by the way, it becomes this back and forth of mind games. And Andrew kind of gets bumped for this new kid, ends up with this 5-hour back and forth. And by the way, I have to admit, there's a cameo of a cowbell, which made me laugh. But it all sets up his opportunity, and they go to this competition. A bus breaks down. He tries to get a rental car. They're fighting. He leaves his sticks behind. Then he gets into a car accident, and it turns in he's a bloody mess. It's just absolute chaos. You're like, holy cow, you went through this long journey with this kid, this amount of work he's done, this sacrifice, this sweaty 5-hour scene. Again, not our time, his time. And it comes to this moment, and he can't execute. He can't complete the task, right? And actually, he snaps, and he attacks Fletcher on stage, which, of course, gets himself expelled and all of this kind of things. So the twists and the turns get little fuzzy and complicated in that it has to do with like off-screen stuff, right? So there's another student. We come to find out this is a student that has self-deleted and it's tied to Fletcher. And then once Andrew is out, he's approached by the family who basically just wants justice, meaning that they just want Fletcher removed, and he agrees. And that's kind of where we leave things until we get to this final act. And the final act basically just takes everything and just turns it all on its head. So Andrew, of course, had gotten expelled. He's just working a regular day job. His dad is supportive. His dad is like, he doesn't have his mom, it's just dad. Dad's like the writer the aspiring writer that couldn't become a high school teacher. And now Andrew looks like he's going to follow down that same kind of path of that type of thing. It's like the journey of the failed musician, the journey of the failed writer. Well, he happens upon this jazz bar and he sees Fletcher there. They end up sharing a drink. Actually, Fletcher calls him by his first name, calls him actually by Andrew and not Neiman. And basically ultimately asks him to join this band that he's put together for this competition, and that he agrees to do this. Now, okay, spoiler warning again, because this is where the film is great. His performance is great. It's amazing, right? But it's really just a journey film, right? And I got to be honest, this is why I don't have as much respect for Tar and why I wanted to see this film before I talked about J.K. Simmons, because I really wanted to gauge it against a film like Tar, the abusive, music themes, those kinds of things. And yes, it's different. But what is different about this film than that film is the twist in this actually does catch me off guard. Like, I really was caught off guard with the twist. And what happens is right before they go on stage, you weren't quite sure if it's going to be a redemption thing. Did Fletcher find its way? You weren't quite sure. The film had been long enough that it could have just ended that way. Nope. Fletcher walks up to them right before the curtain opens and goes, "Of course I effing knew it was you, blah, blah, blah. You're the one that turned me over." And they play their opening song, and it's a song he has never heard of. It's a brand new song. So the jazz band is freaking out, right? He's like totally freaking out, doesn't know what to do. And basically, Andrew makes a fool of himself. He walks off stage, but then he has this moment when his dad hugs him. He just goes back and just starts playing. Like, Fletcher's trying to move on with things. He thinks he's won. He's just going on with the show. He's kind of done this. And Andrew just starts playing a song. And he said, I'll bring in this person, and I'll bring in this person. And what's happening is Andrew is playing the song from the earlier part of the movie, and he is executing it flawlessly, perfectly. And after a little while, Fletcher starts to notice, and Fletcher starts responding, and Fletcher starts leading, and Fletcher starts getting involved. And then even when the song ends, Andrew's not done. He's doing this perfect riff. He just keeps going and going and going. It's emotions, and drum solo. And you get this back and forth with Fletcher. You get this back and forth where he walks in the light, walks out of the light. You see him, you don't see him. And then, of course, there's this one big final moment, and you see Fletcher nod, and you're like, see, that was real redemption, because Andrew was able to deliver the perfection that he was shooting for. Fletcher was able to experience someone delivering the flawless imperfection that he was shooting for. So there's really nothing else to be said or done. And the film just goes black, and that's how it ends. And that's why it's a beautiful film. Now, would I watch the film again? Probably not. Is the film for everyone? Absolutely not. Is it the kind of thing that you can at least acknowledge, maybe find a clip or two? Sure. Right? Because you can watch a couple scenes and get the feel for the show. But when it comes to Oscar performances, and definitely for something like this, where it's a supporting actor role, because technically Miles Teller is the leading actor, his performance to earn this Oscar in the supporting role is next level. Like I said, we talked about Son of a Woman recently. We talked about some of the performances in that film that got Al Pacino his only Oscar, and how A Few Good Men failed to win a lot of Oscars because of the competition that was happening during that time. With the performances, a lot of times for some roles they're impressive. This was next level impressive. This is a lot of Oz meets Tamara Ward, Drill Sergeant. You see all of this come together perfectly. And this is definitely the pinnacle of his career. That's for sure. Just the most incredible performance that I've seen him actually deliver. So anyway, that's my take. me head you out with some generic credits on Pops. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. Don't know your thoughts on it. You know, again, loved it, but wouldn't necessarily watch it again. So it's more like, you know, on a scale, like an 8, like a hard 8, like hard 8s land in that area. Like that's the 4-star movie, right? It's an Oscar worthy film, not necessarily a classic, not something I'd watch again, but there's admirable moments, executed well, those kinds of things. Editing, sound and editing stuff's great, by the way. So anyway, that's that. Tell me what you think.